The old wooden fence wasn't what broke my heart that Saturday morning. It was the man standing beside it. His hands were steady, but his eyes carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had survived battles most people would never understand. I had only waved to him from across the street for months, never realizing that a few hours with a hammer, a handful of nails, and one simple act of kindness would completely rewrite the future. I thought I was destined to live. If you believe that kindness still changes lives, that hope is never wasted, and that forgiveness and second chances can heal even the deepest wounds, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a thoughtful comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these uplifting stories reach more hearts every single day. My name is Nathan, and 3 years before that morning, I had packed my life into the back of an old pickup truck and moved to a quiet neighborhood outside Asheville, North Carolina. After losing my construction business during difficult financial times, I wasn't just struggling with money. I was struggling with believing that I still had something valuable to offer. I worked long hours doing repairs for anyone willing to hire me, but every evening I returned to an empty house that never felt like home. I smiled when neighbors passed by, but inside I carried the heavy feeling that life had quietly moved on without me. Across the street lived an elderly veteran named Harold. Everyone respected him, yet few really knew him. His American flag was always raised before sunrise. His lawn stayed perfectly trimmed, and every Memorial Day he placed small flags beside photographs displayed on his porch. He rarely asked anyone for help, and people assumed he preferred being left alone. That Saturday I noticed one side of his backyard fence had collapsed after a strong storm. Harold was trying to lift one of the heavy posts by himself. I could see determination in his face, but I could also see the strain in his shoulders. Without thinking much about it, I grabbed my toolbox and walked across the street. He looked surprised when I offered to help, almost as if he wasn't used to anyone volunteering, without expecting something in return. We spent the next several hours replacing broken boards, digging new post holes, and laughing over little mistakes that made the work harder than either of us expected. As the afternoon passed, the silence between strangers slowly became the comfortable silence of friends. While we worked, Harold shared pieces of his life that he had kept hidden for years. He spoke about serving his country, about friends he still remembered every single day, and about returning home feeling like the world had changed while he was away. But the deepest sadness appeared when he mentioned his daughter, Grace. Years earlier, grief after losing her mother had pushed them apart. Neither of them knew how to bridge the distance that pain had created. When the fence finally stood tall again, Harold rested his hand on the freshly painted wood and smiled in a way I hadn't seen before. Instead of thanking me with money, he invited me inside for dinner. I almost declined, but something told me to stay. As evening sunlight filled the dining room, the front door opened. A woman carrying grocery bags stepped inside. Harold introduced her as his daughter, Grace. She had recently returned to help care for him after realizing life was too short to let old misunderstandings last forever. Her kindness was immediate, but it wasn't forced. She treated everyone with the quiet warmth of someone who had learned how precious family truly is. Over dinner, we talked about simple things: gardens, favorite books, local hiking trails, and childhood memories. For the first time in years, I laughed without pretending. Grace wasn't impressed by success or money. She admired honesty, patience, and people who showed up when it mattered. Harold kept smiling throughout the evening, watching the conversation unfold, as though he had quietly hoped this meeting might happen. The weeks that followed felt different. I continued helping Harold with projects around his home, and Grace often joined us with homemade lemonade or sandwiches. Slowly, friendship grew into something deeper. She encouraged me to believe in myself again, and with her support I reopened my small construction business, this time focusing on restoring homes instead of chasing large contracts. Word spread quickly through the community, and customers appreciated not only my work but also the care I put into every project. The greatest surprise came months later during the neighborhood's annual picnic. Harold stood before friends and neighbors, thanking everyone for supporting veterans and families. Then he looked directly at me. He said that people often believe heroes wear uniforms, But sometimes, heroes simply notice when someone else is carrying a burden alone. He admitted that fixing the fence hadn't restored his backyard. It had restored his faith that people still cared. Before this story comes to its conclusion, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment telling us about a moment when a simple act of kindness changed your life or someone else's. Your story may become the encouragement another viewer needs today. One crisp autumn afternoon, I stood beside Harold as he watched Grace and me plant young maple trees along the very fence we had rebuilt together. He quietly placed his weathered hand on my shoulder and said that some blessings don't arrive with grand announcements. Sometimes they walk across the street carrying a toolbox. A year later, Grace and I were married in a small church surrounded by neighbors who had become family. Harold walked his daughter down the aisle with tears of gratitude shining in his eyes. Looking around that room, I realized I hadn't simply found love. I had found belonging, purpose, and a family I never expected to have. If this story touched your heart, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribing for more inspiring stories filled with hope, faith, and second chances. Remember, the smallest act of kindness may seem ordinary today, but to someone waiting for hope, it can become the beginning of an entirely new life.